Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Beyond the Pipes, a Between the Pipes podcast with your favorite Between the Pipes pros and creators in the goalie universe and community, here to talk to you, with you, and I guess maybe in some ways about you, on the topic of goaltending in EA NHL. We have a fun episode today, so very excited for you to be joining us wherever you might be doing it. Spotify, YouTube, other places with audio. Funnily enough, we've actually recorded this episode already, and the editor we hired corrupted the audio file somehow. His name is Willemander. I wouldn't recommend him, but nonetheless, excited to get this episode going. Episode number 2 is underway, and with me here today, the stars of the show. We have two fantastic professional EA NHL goalies. I'll let them introduce themselves. Revv, how you doing?
What's going on? I'm doing well. Glad to be back for another episode.
We cannot wait, and thank you so much for carving out a bit of your night tonight to come and chat. On the other side of the world, we have McSavid. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, hello from across the pond. You're the man, the myth, the legend. You're the best editor we've had, so don't sell yourself short.
The only editor we've had. Maybe the bar's a little low. Well, hey, some folks may not know who you are. They may have stumbled upon this. So, Revv, you want to give a quick bio of your time in Shell, your accolades, your resume?
Yeah, so as far as esports, I've been playing competitively since NHL 19. As far as championships, I've won one major sixes event and a few smaller 3v3 events, and right now I'm currently the util goalie for Starstruck, who is playing in their championship game or series tonight, which is Tuesday, November 12th for anyone listening, for the UHL Fall Icebreaker series season, whatever you want to call it.
Rock on. Good luck to your team. Congrats on getting all the way there. McSavid, I'll pass the baton on to you then. I know you love telling us all about your professional winnings and tournament successes. Give us a little bit of your resume.
Yeah. So our first try at this, I told you guys that I had fact-checked myself and said that I had 3 tournament wins. I actually fact-checked myself again. I forgot my 2 German titles, so I got 5 tournament wins at the moment. And since yesterday, actually, I joined a new team, and we actually won our elite qualifier to the ECL Elite winter season starting next week. So I'm pretty stoked about that. I joined as a backup though, but I still get to play some elite level games in Europe this coming season, so that's nice.
That's awesome. 5-time champion McSavid, many-time champion Revv. I didn't count, sorry. We'll make sure to drop the links and where we can hopefully watch some of your guys' games for this upcoming version of Chell, the seasons and the leagues that we'll be in. My name's Willemander. I'm a long-time goalie, never been a pro, but have been doing some content creation here for a little bit, and we are all part of the Between the Pipes community. You can find us on Discord. That's where most of us hang out. We have over 2,000 goalies of all skill levels, from the newest of new all the way to the veteran of veteran, if you will, and everything in between. We talk about goaltending all the time, and this podcast is meant to be just an extension of that. A few folks that really love the game chatting about things, and today we're going to take on a topic that is certainly probably the most commonly talked about topic within the Between the Pipes Discord, which is our builds. The game's been out now for about 2 months, I'd say. A lot of builds have been tested. Different folks have different approaches to how they pick their goalie build in Chell, and you're going to hear from the 2 folks joining me, and I might share a little bit about mine for anyone who's interested, to see what we've found success with so far. To set the stage very quickly, if you're new in EA NHL, when you play in the World of Hockey sort of version, you get to create a character, you get to set up a build, you get to pick for goalies whether you're a hybrid, a stand-up, a butterfly, your size, your weight, and then a bunch of cool attributes and things on top of that. So if you haven't seen it before, recommend jumping in there and playing around. It's very fun. To get us started, I'll say, first of all three of us use a hybrid goalie. We're all 6'5", and with the exception of Revv, who is 5 pounds heavier than all of us, we are all 190 pounds. Revv is 195. Rev, curious why the 195 over 190? We just like a quick little hit there.
I just have to make it accurate because it's almost Thanksgiving, so I just figure I'm going to put on some more weight, so I just figure I'd stay true to real life. But for me, personally, I like having a little bit more weight. Even on a old build I did, I look back all the way, I think it was NHL 20. And I had my build there. I think I had like a butterfly build at 205 pounds or something like that. But I find 195 for me gives me just enough speed where when I have the speed boost in, I move pretty quickly. But I feel like by having that extra weight, it slows me down in a good way. I don't feel like my movements are as chaotic. It feels like it's a lot more controlled, so I can be quick when I need to be. And then when I'm making small adjustments with the left stick, I feel like having that bigger or heavier weight rather grounds me, keeps me in line.
Keeps you in line. A little self-imposed restriction. That makes sense. McSavid, as I mentioned, we all use hybrid, and there's 3 class options: hybrid, stand-up, butterfly. Do you mind explaining the general consensus around hybrid? Certainly is the most common. Tell folks why you landed on hybrid and why you think most folks utilize that class.
Most folks, I'll tell you about my story. I just like to play the game as aggressive as possible, and to be aggressive and to come far out, to cut some angles, I need speed and agility. I also use the speed boost, which I think most people know. I play as aggressive as I do to cut angles and kind of to dictate the play, so I decide where my open space is, so I know where to move when the shot comes. I can't move as fast when I'm as a butterfly goalie or a stand-up goalie. The hybrid build is the fastest one, so that's why I play hybrid.
Spot on. Yeah, the one thing I'll flag, which if you are newer, or maybe if you just haven't joined the Discord and heard people talk about this before, even though they sound like they're different styles of goalie, hybrid versus stand-up versus butterfly, in EA NHL, the only difference between the 3 is the base level that all of your stats start at. So hybrid starts with the fastest speed, fastest agility. It sacrifices in a few other stats, but there's typically stats that we don't mind sacrificing in. Just like McSavid said, I tend to think speed and agility are very important, and many goalies do this year especially. That's why most folks use hybrid, and then most folks also use 6'5" for the height, simply because it sets your vision at a pretty high baseline as well. Vision makes sure that your goalie can see through screens as people pass by you or set up looking for things like a tip or whatnot. And it's a free way to get some extra points in the vision score, which is a pretty expensive stat compared to some of the others. Curious, Revv, any other thoughts on the 6'5", or is it mostly for the vision?
Yeah, I definitely enjoy the vision, and I think maybe even just the perceived benefit of seeing a bigger goalie in net, which makes you feel like you're covering more net, which could be the same talk about stances, but I think just looking bigger makes you play more confidently, I'd say.
Rock on. That covers the sort of basic foundational parts of all three of our builds, and you'll find most people's builds start very similarly, just like what we described here. But now we can get into things like the abilities and the attribute points and where we tend to focus. Funnily enough, today, the three of us are all at least currently using a build with the same zone ability. That zone ability is the big gold one that technically should do the most for your build and is the keystone of what your build is. All three of us are currently using gold butterfly effect, which is supposed to make it so that when your goalie is in the butterfly stance or is going down into butterfly, it increases your goalie's reaction speed, your recovery, your accuracy when making saves. And McSavid, curious for your thoughts here. I tend to find that it activates a lot because your goalie will automatically drop to butterfly pretty often throughout a game. And when I'm in butterfly, I also tend to find that's where I'm most vulnerable. I feel like I get sniped when I'm in butterfly in ways that I don't when I'm standing up. And so I like that boost, but McSavid, curious how you landed on butterfly effect for your gold, and have you tried any others this year so far?
Yeah, I think we think pretty much alike there, because I also feel, or at least felt, even more vulnerable when the puck is right in front of me and I'm in butterfly. But thanks to the golden butterfly, the reflexes gets a significant boost, in my opinion. With the gold butterfly, I think you save more pucks than any other golden trait. But of course, golden post to post is great ability as well. But if you use the hybrid with a lot of speed, you could use it as a silver instead. That's why I landed on golden butterfly.
Couldn't agree more. Revv, I know and would love to hear your approach almost as a little side topic, but you're someone who year after year tends to use the same build almost exactly. And so you've been using butterfly effect for quite some time. Is that right?
Yeah, as a shameless plug to the BTP Discord, join if you haven't already. I posted in there a side-by-side of my build from NHL 24, which I made in like December, so almost a year at this point. And I compared it to the build that I'm still currently using in 25, and minus the added points that we got to put into, I think, quickness and positioning, they're pretty much identical with the same weight, same height, pretty much same gold and silver traits. So for me, I'm definitely of the mindset of like, when it feels good, stick with it. There's no need to experiment when it's working for you. So that's how I landed on that way back when, and I still feel good about it now.
And I'll follow that up with another question, Revv. There's something that I've come to believe and has helped me a lot, which is I certainly can cook up a bunch of builds that if I have a game where I get sniped a lot, all of a sudden I'm thinking, ooh, it could be nice to switch to butterfly and then put on gold light work. Or maybe there's a game where I'm getting scored on via tips often, and so I might want to throw on silver tipper. But something that I've come to build discipline in myself has been learning how your build works, even through the games where maybe you could look at a different build and say, that might have helped me in this one game, but putting reps into your build and not changing it can teach you how to overcome something that maybe changing your build could help you with, but then you'd have to learn a different build in other ways. Do you share that thought? And what would you recommend to folks who maybe they're new, or maybe they're the type of person that right now changes their build every couple days?
No, I think that's a good point, that since obviously not every build plays the exact same, so I think it's important to learn your build, where it excels, the things that you need to be, I guess, compensating for, you could say. And the only way you're going to do that, like you said, is with reps, by playing multiple games over and over again to understand how it works. And I think for goalies that are still trying to find that build, I think that would be the best ways to say play maybe 5-10 games with the same build, then switch it out to another one and see how that plays. But for me personally, I know that, like you said, there are people too that have different builds based off of maybe teams that they know play a certain style, and so they may choose a build to go with that. Me personally, I just like to think that once I have a build, I like to just set that, because then I feel like my game plays consistent, I'm consistent, and then that way it gives me one less thing to think about. Oh, if I had switched this, would it have been different? I can just say, did I make the save or did I not make the save? And I don't really put it on the build itself.
I love it, and I agree. And I do tend to have maybe 1 or 2 alternate classes or builds. Usually I have one that does have silver tipper on. If I see a team that has multiple players on their team set up to try to get tips, especially if I'm in a league where I know that's how they'll actually try to play, maybe I'll consider doing it for a game. But I'm always aware that it's a build that I probably haven't practiced on a lot, and I think you raised such a great point, learning how your build plays so that once you get it in almost muscle memory, then you can focus on the harder part of the game, which is playing the game that's in front of you. Last question on golds. I'll toss this one to you, McSavid. We're all using butterfly effect, and I think we explained why pretty well. You mentioned that gold post to post is a common one. Are there any other gold abilities that you've tried, or any other ones that you've seen other people use, especially this year, but even in years past, that you think are interesting and people who are listening might be willing to give it a try?
Oh, this is a real question. From years past, I can't really say that I recall any. My memory is pretty short sometimes. However, gold butterfly have been the most popular ones that I can recall this year and years past. Also, torsionist, and that's pretty. And the post to post, of course, that's pretty much the gold traits I've seen, since most goalies I played against also use hybrid. There's really not many stand-up or butterfly goalies in Europe, and it has been for quite some years.
Yeah, it's one thing that I do think EA might or almost should change at some point, is depending on the stance you pick, hybrid, butterfly, or stand-up, you get access to different gold abilities you can use. There's some crossover, but for example, hybrid doesn't get to use gold NoTimer or gold light work. And sometimes I think those would be interesting to try, and sometimes I'll try them on a stand-up, but the sacrifice we make losing that speed seems to be a little bit too major for, it sounds like, all of us.
Yeah.
Moving on then to where we do start to differ a little bit, which is the silver abilities that we pick. You get 1 gold ability and then 2 silvers, and the silvers are the same abilities that are available in gold, just theoretically they are less potent, less strong. Exactly how much less the gold or the silver butterfly effect is versus the gold butterfly effect, I don't know that we understand that perfectly, but you certainly can feel it. I think, Revv, why don't we start with you? Why don't you walk us through the silver abilities that you've been using and tell us a little bit about why?
Yeah, so my 2 silvers that I use right now are post to post and light work. And before I landed on butterfly as my gold, I was big on the post to post trait pretty much since these became part of the game, which I think was back in like 21 or 22. And now that I've gotten onto butterfly effect, I figured that those are my 2 favorite traits, I would say. So I think the fact that now I can have them both by making my gold butterfly effect works best for me, so that's why I have that as my first silver. And then secondly, my other one would be light work, which I like that one just because of the premise of having better chances on wrist shots, which those seem to be the most common shots I face. So for me, it seems like a no-brainer to pick something that benefits my save ability against the most common kind of shots that I face.
This year, we've seen one-timers spike up in terms of their like perceived danger, I guess you could call it. It seems like now that EA added that skill-based green one-timer mechanic, as well as folks are using gold 1T or silver 1T now that Elite Edges has been removed, which used to be the most common gold, and so it's freed that up for people to start using things like 1T. More than ever, I've seen people pick and choose and test out NoTimer versus post-to-post. Revv, did you give NoTimer a try, or are you comfortable with post-to-post, or how do you see those two differ from each other?
It is true that, yeah, there's definitely been more of a spike in one-timers with how much more viable and how like effective they are. For me, I still stuck with my abilities I have currently because I felt like just by solely getting into position that more often than not I was able to make the save on those one-timers still, versus feeling like I needed to have that trait in order to have a chance to stop the skill-based one-timers. So for me, I haven't really noticed too much of a difference. For me, I usually pin it on my positioning as opposed to the trait.
A little bit more relying on your own skill first and letting the build help you there versus relying on the build and that NoTimer trait to help you make the save. That reminds me of a really common thing that gets talked about in Between the Pipes often, and Revv, would love to get your thoughts before we jump over to McSavid here. I certainly love obsessing over builds and thinking about it, tweaking them, trying things out, but what would you say is the split between how important a build is for a goalie's success versus everything else? The gameplay, the foundation, the ability to read a play and get in position yourself for a one-timer, for example, just like you talked about. How would you grade how impactful those two things are?
I would say probably in the early days of the game, I think getting used to how the game moves and at the same time landing on a build, I think that's when builds matter the most, when you're trying to, I guess you could say, discover your identity for that year. But then I think once you find a build that you are relatively comfortable with, then I think that's where you need to leave that on the back burner for a little bit and then focus on your gameplay, how you're reading plays with that build. And then if you do notice any issues, then you can go back to the drawing board. But I feel like once you have a build early on in the game, I think that's when you can shift your focus for the remainder of the year, as long as no big updates happen, and just roll with what you have. And I think more goalies would probably be better off because they wouldn't feel like they have to change their build when a tip goes in, or when they feel like, oh, if they had a certain trait, they'd be able to get over there quicker or reach further or something, for example.
Absolutely. As a reminder, just to recap, Revv's build is Gold Butterfly Effect, Silver Post-to-Post, and Light Work. Jumping over to you, McSavid, why don't you walk us through, obviously you're using Gold Butterfly Effect as well, but walk and talk us through the silver traits or silver abilities you've picked and a little bit of an explanation as to why.
Sure. Firstly, I just want to say that I don't think there's perfect build I don't think there's a perfect build, period. But I think there might be a perfect build for you. goalies want to play the game at a certain way. There is perfect build for that type of play style. There's no perfect build, but there is probably a perfect build for you. With that said, since this is our second take, I'm not sure if you're showing the correct build right now, but I'm using silver NoTimer and silver post-to-post at the moment.
That is exactly what we have too, thank goodness. The editor got it right on the back end here. So you are, compared to Revv, Revv has post to help with those big movements. We often think about that being helpful for one-timers. And then he has light work, which is maybe more for people who are taking like a snipe or looking to do a wrist shot, snapshot type thing. Whereas you, with the silver NoTimer, silver post-to-post, those maybe go in tandem with each other, making for a really strong approach to... I guess I'll ask you, are you doing it specifically to help with one-timers and like really doubling down on that type of shot? Or tell us how you landed on this combo, paired up with your gold butterfly effect, of course.
Sure. I actually think Revv might be having the wrong trade. I think he might be doing better with the silver NoTimer, because his ability to read the game and make the cross crease saves is probably more about him reacting in time. Because for me, post to post actually means post to post, where when they're trying to do a backdoor pass, when I really have to, the post to post is not the one timer thing for me. It's when the puck goes across the whole what's it called?
Crease, perhaps?
Paint?
Yeah,
crease. Yeah,
got you.
that's post to post for me, and the NoTimer is of course one timer, and the NoTimer activates anytime there's a one timer. That's self-explanatory, but it doesn't have to be a post to post movement. However, the most post to post passes across the crease is a one timer, but it's not always. And when it isn't a one timer and the post to post activates for me is when I save it.
That's really interesting. I've tried all three of the... Obviously, I've tried my build, which is slightly different. It's a combination of your two. But I've tried both of your builds this year. I started pretty much with your build, McSavid, and then I switched to something that looked a little bit closer to Revv's, and now I'm a little bit in between. And I didn't think of it that way at first, and I was trying to... Basically, when I had NoTimer and post-to-post, I liked it, and I thought that I was getting some good animations from post-to-post that I didn't really see when I took it off. But ultimately, I kept telling myself that NoTimer and post-to-post solve the same shot. But what you described is so true. Those backdoor shots that occur where you have to cross the crease going from post-to-post, and I think we know that post-to-post will activate even if you're not going perfectly from one post to the other, which is fantastic and is great. But even in the times you're right. It's not always a one-timer that you're reacting to. Maybe it's a wrap. Maybe it's a pass that somebody then settles for a second and it's no longer considered a 1T. But that movement is... And the fact that you would ever have to get from one post to another means it's always a dangerous shot for their team. And it sounds like you've found a good way to not have those two abilities necessarily overlap. Is that a fair understanding?
They're not the same for me. Some people think they might activate at the same time, but it doesn't for me. And I think I just did last year when I played with post-to-post and started making some very unusual saves and unusual reaches. from backdoor passes actually. So that's why am I making these saves now? And then came to me, I figured out that it's because I'm using post to post, even if it's not a one-timer backdoor pass. And so after that, I started playing more with post to post. And when I started playing this year, I took it off, tried a little showstopper, worked good, but and I stopped making those great backdoor pass saves. And so at the moment, I'm using it again and playing good with it.
I think that makes a ton of sense, and is something that I remember last year. I started with gold butterfly effect on a whim, randomly switched to gold post to post for the first time in many years. I'd been gold butterfly effect for a long time, and as soon as I switched to gold post to post, I found that, I guess I mentioned this a moment ago, I was seeing new saves, new animations, and it sounds like you found the same thing. You were making reach saves that maybe you didn't expect to at first.
No.
Yeah. And then I'll quickly touch on mine, because funnily enough, you teed it up pretty well yourself, McSavid, in your recommendation to Revv. I use NoTimer and Lightwork as a combo. I started the year with post to post and Lightwork, but given what EA has done to improve the strength of one-timers, the sort of danger that one-timers provide, I had never used NoTimer before in any years previous. I have always relied on post-to-post in my build, whether it be gold or silver, to be what helps me save 1Ts. But with how dangerous they are, I guess I decided I want an ability that specifically will activate on those, and then rely on my reactions, my ability to read the play, to do what post-to-post should do for me. And I miss it from time to time for sure, but it seems to be the nice sort of balance between the two. And then Lightwork, I keep on taking it on and off. There's been this is a great reason to join the Discord if you haven't. There's been a lot of discourse in the last month, maybe 2 weeks or so especially, where people are starting to wonder, is Lightwork useless? Does it actually do anything? And as soon as people started saying it, I started to believe it, and I took it off, and it didn't seem to bug me at all. But then I hit a string of 5 or so games where I was getting sniped in ways I wasn't used to, and so whether it is real or not, I ended up putting it back on. And I think that's a pretty common thing about builds, is it worked for me originally, I changed it and I thought I found something better, but then I always went back to the comfort zone. Not sure if you can relate, or if you've done the same thing, McSavid, with your builds over time.
No, at first I think it said that Lightwork should activate on wrist shots, and when in fact pretty much every shot that's not a one-timer or backhand is the snapshot. Later on they switched, so it should activate on snapshots as well. After that, I think it might have worked a bit better, but for me, NoTimer is a no-brainer. To be honest, I can't play without it. I need it.
I couldn't agree more. And to summarize then, McSavid's build is gold butterfly effect, silver NoTimer, and silver post to post. And mine is the combination of Revv and McSavid's, basically gold butterfly effect, silver NoTimer, and silver Lightwork. Revv, I know there was a little tech issue, but have you rejoined us? Are you here?
Yes, sir. We are.
Rock on. Then let's get into sort of the final section of the builds. And this section looks a little bit larger, but I think it ends up getting boiled down to a smaller version of itself. And what I'm talking about here, of course, is the attributes section. So this is the numerical section where you have a bunch of different sort of attributes about your goalie: glove low, agility, recovery, rebound control, passing even. And you can adjust the number of points that you give or take away from these, and you can reapply any points that maybe you take away from, say, poke check, and you could give those points into something like speed or agility. It's broken into 4 trees. If you've played, we all know what we're talking about here. I think the way to cover this would be, there's 4 different trees that hold a few different attributes: low, hands, quickness, and positioning. Revv, I'll pass a question to you. My understanding, as I've learned it from folks in the community, has been that the points that you put into low and hands, and so those points are for things like glove low, glove high, stick low, stick high, 5-hole, passing. Those points tend to be treated as like a wash. Maybe it's because they don't matter at all, or maybe it's because there's no real reason to make your glove low better than your stick low, or your passing certainly better than your glove high. Do you have any thoughts or any recommendations for how people think about these first 2 trees, the low and the hands tree?
I would say that, like you said, it's pretty much a wash, I'd say, across the board. The only trait that I really see get bumped up and down considerably would probably be the 5-hole, which I think some people might bump it up a little bit higher, either to get butterfly effect, because I believe it's 86 5-hole or something like that for it to work as a silver ability. But then that can cut into the glove low and stick low, which some people, myself included, like seeing the bigger numbers on that, even if, say, like an 88 glove low versus a 90 isn't really that much of a difference at all in the grand scheme of things. I think for me personally, having that number higher is better, but at the same time, yeah, I guess having my numbers as high as they can be is best. That I don't think it's good to send 5-hole all the way down to the basement, but then at the same time, I wouldn't put that above glove low and stick low. So I'd say those are pretty consistent across the board. I'd say 5-hole is the only one that you see really adjusted.
Totally agreed. The meta tends to be exactly as you said. If people are going to change 5-hole, it's because they're putting it up to 86, because there's a few silver traits, ones that we didn't talk about here. If you are using silver butterfly or silver sponge, for example, I believe, that require you change your 5-hole. Other than that, yes, it seems like if there is a meta approach, most people do exactly as you just said. McSavid, you mentioned that you pick hybrid because of the high speed and the way that you use that speed to control the play and force shooters to maybe pick an angle, pick a side. Jumping into the quickness tree, quickness has speed and agility, poke check, durability, and endurance. I'm curious what you've found, maybe what you've tested, and where you've landed with. I guess we'll start with speed and agility. I would assume you think those are the 2 most important, but tell us a little bit about how you approach that quickness tree.
Ooh. Yeah, sometimes I'm not sure of myself. All I know is I want it high, maybe just for my own satisfaction sake. I don't think I can't even remember when I had speed and agility down at 90. I think that my lowest through the last 4 years been 92 or something. But I'd say that my agility is a bit more important than my speed, because of my change of directions and my feel that I want to be able to cover pretty much all areas as possible. When I start every year, I always try to bump up my agility as high as possible and go into practice mode after that and see how I feel. At 96, which I am at the moment, I try to take it down to see where I'm comfortable at the lowest speed, and maybe bump up some other attributes as maybe endurance, which I'd say is the third most important one in that category.
So then
But,
it sounds like right now your speed and your agility are both at 96. Is that right?
yeah, that's right. And I had another build since yesterday in the middle of our playoff series. We were playing a best of 7. We were down 3-1 games, and I didn't play good. I felt slow, and then I switched to my 96 build, started playing better, and we won 4-3. We won game 7, so
No
which
way.
took us up to
Wow.
So I started playing better when I switched build to my fast one, and of course we as a whole team started playing better defense as well. So
Well, as
yeah, my speedy build gave me more confidence than the rest of that series for sure.
that's such a cool story. Congratulations, first of all, on the crazy comeback there.
Yeah.
As a fellow speed demon, I've had my speed and agility up at 97 at one point. Right now, both of mine are at 96, and I'm going to use that as a anecdote as if anyone ever questions the Speedy Gonzalez build, all you got to do is look at McSavid making a 3-1 comeback to win a best of 7. Rock on, man! Congrats.
Yeah, but it's a little bit like Revv said earlier, that, or it were you maybe, but sometimes you have to adapt your build after the team that you're playing against do. So I think I have they're pretty much the same build, but I got 3 different tweaks, the one with the Speedy Gonzalez, and maybe one with higher recovery, and one with, I don't know, with better vision or endurance or something like that. But they're pretty similar, but this is the speediest one. So and that was the best build for me yesterday. Maybe tomorrow I could use another tweak, but
That makes
that was
sense.
the best build.
So then it sounds like your and I's quickness tree are probably the same. 96 speed, 96 agility. And then I'm guessing that means that your poke check, your durability, your endurance are all very low, maybe -5, maybe -4, depending on different traits or whatnot. Revv, your build is a little bit more, I'd say, balanced in the quickness side of things. The screenshot I'm looking at, and hopefully it sounds like it's still up to date, you're rocking 89 speed and 93 agility. You bring your poke check all the way down pretty much, but then you are able to use those points that McSavid and I don't get to use because we boost our speed and agility so high. You get to take those points and put them into durability and endurance. A 2-part question. One, would love to hear a little bit about your approach to speed and agility, and if you've tinkered around and what you found. I know you mentioned earlier that you go 195 pounds because you like almost some intentional slowness to keep you under control. So any thoughts there, of course, but then would particularly be curious to hear your thoughts on the impact you've felt with the durability and endurance attributes having, or not being at -5 the way that McSavid and I's are currently.
So yeah, this kind of goes in part with, like you said, with the weight, where for me, instead of having my speed be controlled by just how fast I move when I hold down the left stick, I like having essentially an additional control over my speed by using the speed boost not all the time. So for me, when I want that quick boost, that's when I'll hold down the speed boost if I need to shuffle from one side to the other, versus me just holding down the left stick. Because for me, when I'm making smaller adjustments, I feel like it's easier to be more in control with the lower speed and the higher weight, but then I feel like I can still catch up when I need to by having the speed boost. So I feel like I'm ticking off all the boxes there without getting myself out of position by being too quick. And then as far as the durability and endurance, I'll say quite frankly, because I think you touched on this either on one of your TikToks, or we might have also talked about this before on the unseen recording of this episode. But the concept that it was either durability or endurance, or just both, that by having them higher, it only really saved, say, one more puck, or you faced one more shot before it was completely depleted, rather. And again, for me, it might be a subconscious thing of just seeing all my stats being relatively consistent and then mentally feeling like, okay, I have a well-rounded build, therefore I don't have to really worry about any certain aspect of my game in particular, because if everything is pretty consistent, then I can play, in my mind, a more consistent game. But that could be something worth tinkering with if I definitely sit with that more of maybe taking those points out of durability and endurance. And since I'm using the speed boost to make up for the speed that might be lost during that, then I could just dump that into more agility or more speed and then see how that goes. So that it would be interesting to try, but right now for me, I do like having the lower speed and just controlling that with my speed boost.
Yeah, the approach to speed and how different people look at it is such a cool thing. I think all three of us use speed boost, but we probably all use it in different ways. And I think for listeners out there, that's a good sign. There's different approaches to the way you view the game, the way you want to play the game, and the way maybe you even just naturally think of goaltending. And you're right. One important thing to note, if folks don't know, is everyone has a stamina bar under them, goalies, skaters alike. When your stamina bar gets into the red, your silver abilities effectively deactivate. And there certainly is a thought that keeping that stamina bar above the red as long as you can would be very important, because your abilities should be very strong. You only get to pick 2 silvers. But what you mentioned, Revv, is at least in the most recent testing that I'm aware of, though I hope somebody's doing some more and can update us if it's changed in any way, it seemed to be that a goalie with very low durability and endurance would reach empty stamina after something like 4 shots taken against them, and then a goalie with high durability and endurance would hit 0 on, I think it was 5 or 6 shots. At its face, that sounds like it's basically the same thing, but look, in a game like hockey, where you can win or lose based on 1 goal, and that means 1 shot where you either maybe get your post-to-post or NoTimer or light work to activate or not, can be huge. 5 and 6 shots, that 1-shot delta, maybe I'm being a little dramatic here, but it could be pretty frequent that offensive possessions don't ever make it to that 6th shot if your team is stout enough on defense. So I certainly think there's a good argument to be made to consider using those stats in the endurance attributes if you find that your speed is suitable for you. With that, why don't we bounce to the final tree? And this is a fun one. This is one where I'd say there's the most variance in terms of how people approach this. This is the positioning tree, and it has 5 attributes in it: rebound control, vision, breakaway, angles, and recovery. And what I find funny about the 3 of us is I feel like we have somebody who's like a big believer in at least one of these attributes that maybe the rest of us might not be as strong in. Let me start with you, McSavid. You are actually the one who taught me about the power of the breakaway attribute. I used to think the breakaway attribute was worthwhile, just completely -5 every single time. I almost thought it did nothing. And you and I had a conversation, and I watched a video that you put up, and I started to see a big difference. So why don't you talk about how you approach the breakaway attribute first and foremost?
Yeah, so what I've tested out, especially during last last year is that when the breakaway stat is higher, you get faster reflexes on a pure breakaway or a penalty shot. And when I tanked my breakaway stat just for fun, testing out, I felt like I was moving in mud, so to speak. I figured out that a higher breakaway stat makes me save more pucks on breakaways, since my reflexes and the save abilities skyrocketed.
And one thought I've had, and as soon as you mentioned that to me and I started putting more points into it, I felt that almost immediately. The reactivity from my goalie, the speed, I feel like even increased a little bit, which I know you've mentioned to me before. The one thing that I often hear, and I've thought myself, is even if that's true, that it makes your breakaway speed and just overall ability to make saves better, isn't it easy for us to blame breakaways on your team and say, hey, I shouldn't be facing these anyways? Or have you noticed this year that there's more breakaways than usual or less? Or how do you think about the fact that breakaways maybe shouldn't be happening as much, but perhaps you still want to be able to save them, I guess?
Yeah, of course, I want to be able to save everything, and as everyone knows that the breakaway is the goalie's fault. However, as a goalie, you want to be able to save, to help your team out sometimes. When the breakaway saves, it's always a good morale boost for the entire team.
That's true.
But to be perfectly honest, I've been struggling a lot on breakaways this year. When I figure it out, I'm make a video about it, but I haven't figured it out this year, this far, because I've been trying to play them the same way as I did last year. But maybe it's because I'm a year older, my reactions are slower, or there's something fishy going on. So still, I feel like a rookie. I can't play the breakaway as I did last.
It's comforting to hear that I've been struggling with them, and I figure maybe it's just where I'm at. But if the breakaway master himself is having issues, then I guess we can all feel a little bit more comfortable. But let's go and hit the lab, McSavid. Let's go test some stuff out and see how we can fix it.
Sure. For sure.
Revv, you actually were the one who, I don't know that we talked about it necessarily, but just looking at your builds gave me a good reason to try out boosting my recovery almost to the max. And I know other goalies do it, but I think I noticed it with you first, so I'll go to you for the recovery attribute. Tell us a little bit about why you have that. I think you have it maxed out. It looks like you have it at 97. So tell us a little bit about the recovery attribute and why you use it.
Yeah, so for this, I got inspired by this from a video that John made a while ago, and a couple things where he was breaking down builds, and his mindset on recovery was, because before I think it was that you had to boost recovery at the expense of something, and before angles was a thing, that you had vision, breakaway, recovery, and rebound control. And for me, vision is also something that I put a lot of stock into. So at the time I was like, what can I get rid of or lower in order to boost my recovery? Because my mindset is a higher recovery, the quicker you're gonna get back to your feet to get out of those auto animations and get back to having control. So I figured I would debuff or tune down rebound control, because my mindset is I would rather have a quicker speed to get back to when I'm in control of my goalie than a higher chance of my goalie either smothering the puck or kicking it to a safe spot. So I think that's my driving force behind having recovery as high as I can have it.
I think it makes a lot of sense too, because when you think about the need to recover control, oftentimes that situation is in a rebound scenario. In as much as somebody might boost their rebound and hope that means that they don't need to get into situations where recovery is paramount. I've used pretty much maxed out rebound control before. I know many folks do to this day. Even with a high rebound control, you still give them up, and so then you're still going to need recovery. And then there's other parts of the game where recovery comes into play. So that I certainly have shifted my mindset based on exactly what you just said, and I think it makes so much sense. And lastly, Revv, you mentioned vision. I feel like that stat used to be the one that everybody maxed no matter what. This year I'm seeing people certainly have it high, 92, 93, but I feel like people aren't maxing it as often. Have you noticed any change, or have you just felt that there's other attributes that deserve the points a little bit more than vision?
For me personally, I haven't noticed as much of a change. I know that like a thing that kind of changed over the years was how our goalie was reacting to screens, because before we didn't even know our goalie was being screened. So then I feel like a lot of people may have bumped their vision all the way up because like we can't tell statistically when our goalie is being like what the algorithm is saying for like when our goalie is being screened. So we'd rather just have it up all the way and not worry about it, versus now you can tell when your goalie's screened because you'll see him move left or right and try to get some sight lines on the puck. But I think with the emergence of angles and the instinct system that a lot of people, including yourself, have bought into, that I think people see a little bit more benefit to having points and angles as opposed to just maxing vision all the way.
Totally. I think it's a great segue. I've seen vision always be high, but certainly it may be lowered a little bit. And I do also, although I haven't run the numbers, but I have to assume that you mentioned this earlier, EA added the angles attribute last year to the positioning tree. I think that meant that they also gave more points into that tree overall. And so if you are somebody who maybe takes your points out of angles, maybe you don't put a lot of points into breakaway, and maybe you don't put a ton of points into rebound control, I think starting last year, you had more points where you could have a high vision and high recovery, and I don't know if it was quite as easy in years past. I could be totally mistaken here. But I'll segue into the angles attribute then to wrap us up. As somebody who, you mentioned it, Revv, is a big believer in the instinct mechanic, I will say, so first of all, if you haven't seen the angles attribute, because it is relatively new, it states that it increases the bonus that you get when you're using the instincts mechanic. And the instincts mechanic was new last year. It basically is this, you hold down, for most people, it's the left trigger, and then you get to aim with your right stick to guess, using your instincts, where you think the opponent is going to shoot. So maybe you guess top, or maybe you guess 5-hole, or so on and so forth. And if you guess correctly, it lights up green and it gives you a big boost in your save percentage effectively. I've been using instincts since it came out. I immediately decided that I was going to adapt this new tool, and I have very strong opinions about it through a very large sample size. However, speaking about builds, I actually put my angles all the way down because, and this was my test that I did, is when I guess correctly using the instinct mechanic, when I get a green instinct guess, I still make that save. Confidently can say 95% of the time. I've recorded every single goal that's gone in on me when I guessed and it shined green, but it still went in. And I only have 5 recordings over a year and 2 months now. And that entire time, basically, I had -5 angles. And so if the instinct mechanic is working at that high of a percentage, something very close to 99%, given how many saves I've made with it over the year and change, but I don't have to put any points into it, that's all the better for me. And so, to wrap up my little portion here, highly recommend folks give Instincts a try. It's certainly a little bit difficult to learn at first, especially if you've been a long-time goalie. But I definitely would say use those points in something more important like recovery, vision, breakaway, or even in rebound control if that's your speed. Well, guys, the one thing that we left out is the boost section. You get to add 2 boosts to your build. Those basically give, usually it's a +2 boost to any attribute. There's a few that are +4, I believe. A lot of folks use +2 speed, +2 agility. I know Revv and McSavid use +2 agility and +2 recovery. Any hot takes on recommendations for boosts? I tend to think of it as whatever attributes you care the most about, go ahead and give them +2, or maybe you can use it to balance things out. But McSavid, is there any strong opinions that you have about which boost people should consider using?
Strong opinions, I don't know. I'd like to recommend the +2 agility, either green or blue, just to be able to do the minor movements faster.
Totally. And Revv, figure with everything you shared about the importance of recovery, that's why you've been rocking the +2 recovery. Any other ones you've tried or might recommend?
Oh yeah, I'm in the same boat with McSavid. That I think agility, and I guess this quickly goes back to why I have my agility at 93 and my speed at 89, because yeah, I think being able to change direction a lot quicker is a lot more important than just having flat out speed. So I think giving that agility just a little extra boost is worthwhile.
Rock on. Guys, we have just talked through all 3 of our builds front to back. Before we head out here, any final thoughts on maybe the concept of testing builds, thinking about builds, any builds that you want to try maybe for fun in the future? Any closing thoughts? McSavid, I'll start with you.
No, I'm pretty much set with the way I play the game and the kind of build I need to be able to perform on the way I play and on the type of level I play at. I'll probably most do some minor tweaks, either speed and recovery, vision, just minor tweaks on that. But I'll still be fast and agile on every build.
And Revv, curious on your side, any recommendations for the way people approach and think about it? I know we've talked about a few already, or anything that you've been testing out in the lab or enjoy seeing on other people's builds?
I guess for me, it's slightly more a playstyle thing, but I've definitely tried to adopt the tried and true McSavid breakaway strategy. And I think if I mess around and tune up my breakaway even further than 91, then I might see even more success with that. But that would probably be the main thing that I might tinker with. And maybe the durability and endurance, and see if I can handle the speed once and for all, or if I'm gonna stick with my slower build. But those would be the main ones I would probably look at.
Gentlemen, what a fantastic episode. I'm hoping our editor figures it out in the editing room and we get this episode live once and for all. Folks, thank you so much for joining us on episode number 2 of Beyond the Pipes. If you would like to join in these discussions with all of us in the Discord, that link will certainly be in the bio or description or whatever it is from where you're finding us today. And you can also check us out on social media. You'll find the Between the Pipes Instagram and Twitter. You'll see Revv and McSavid's Instagrams, Twitters. You'll find my TikTok there if you want to come and leave comments and tell me what I should change in my build and what you've been using. Let us know what's been working for you and what you think we should try. And we cannot thank you enough for joining us here today. For my fantastic co-hosts, McSavid and Revv, my name is Willemander. This has been Beyond the Pipes, a Between the Pipes podcast. Can't wait to catch you on the next one, and good luck out there on the ice, our fellow goalies. Go ahead, go make some saves.